Hi, I'm the Pavli, and today I'm going to be reading you a story from Hans Andersen's Fairy Tales. So, this is not a fairy tale in the conventional sense that it's about princes saving princesses. The story, The Old Street Lamp, is what I'm going to read to you today. And a quick word before I get started. So, what draws me to fairy tales is not the element of magic and make believe in it, but the fact that it reminds us who are adults that there is magic in little things, in ordinary things, and fairy tales connect you to the child within, and it reminds you of the things in life that are truly important. So if you have nothing else to do, then listen in to the story about the old street lamp. Have you ever heard the tale of the old street lamp? Not that it is particularly entertaining, but it is nice to hear just for once. She was such a respectable old lamp who for many years had given good service, and now she was to be taken away. On her very last evening she sat on the lamp post, lighting up the street. She felt somewhat like an old ballerina dancing for the last time, knowing full well that tomorrow she would be turned into old iron. The old lamp was terrified by the thought of the approaching day, for she knew she would then be taken first to the town hall to be examined by the 36 wise men of the council, who would decide whether or not she was still fit for service. There it would be determined whether she should be sent to light up one of the bridges, or perhaps to one of the factories right out in the country, or perhaps she would go direct to an iron foundry, where, of course, she would be melted down and made into something different. This thought worried her the most, for she feared whether in that case she would retain her memory of ever having been a street lamp. Whatever the outcome, she knew she would have to bid goodbye to the lamplighter and his wife, whom she considered as her own family. She was made a street lamp at the very same time he had been made a lamplighter. In those days his wife considered herself rather noble. Only when she passed the lamp at night did she throw her a glance, never by day. By now, in the latter years, when all three had grown old, the lamplighter, his wife, and the street lamp too, the wife tended her well, cleaned her, and filled her with fresh oil. The lamplighter and his wife were indeed most honest people. They had never cheated her of a single drop of oil. Now it was her last night in the street, and tomorrow she would go to the town hall. Two gloomy thoughts for the old street lamp to think about. You can well imagine how she burned. But other thoughts passed through her head. Why? She had seen so much in her life. She had shone for so many people, guiding them on their way, perhaps as many as the 36 wise men of the town did. But she thought none of this out loud, for she was an old, modest lantern who did not wish to hurt anyone's feelings, least of all her superiors. She remembered so much, and now and again she flamed and blazed at her thoughts. Oh yes, they too remember me. That handsome young man, for instance, though it is many years ago now. He came with a letter in his hand. It was written on rose-colored paper, so fine, so very fine, with gilt edges. It was beautifully written in a lady's handwriting. The young man read the letter twice over, kissed it, and looked up at me with eyes which seemed to say, "I am the happiest man in the world." Oh yes, only he and I knew what was written in that first letter from his beloved. And I recall another pair of eyes. How strange it is that one can jump so from one thought to another. There was a splendid funeral passing down our street. In the coffin inside the carriage lay a young, beautiful woman. There was such a lot of flowers and wreaths and so many bright torches that I was almost lost among them. The pavement was packed with people who had followed the procession, but when the torches had disappeared from sight and I glanced around, I saw someone standing by my post, weeping. Never will I forget those sorrowful eyes staring into me. Thus many more memories passed through the old street lamp, who shone for the last time that night. The sentinel on guard, when he is relieved, sees his successor and can exchange a few words with him, but the lamp would not see who was to replace her. Yet she could have given so many useful hints about rain and sleet, about moonlight spreading over the pavement, and from which side the wind blew. On the board across the gutter stood a trio, who had come to present themselves to the lamp, thinking that she herself would appoint her successor. The first of the trio was a herring's head, which, as you know, shines in the dark. He was of the opinion that if he were placed on the lamp post, a great saving would be made on oil. The second was a piece of tinder, which also shone in the dark. It did indeed declare that it shone more brightly than a stockfish, not to mention it was the last stem of a tree which had once been the pride of the forest. The third was a glow-worm. How she got there, the street lamp could not imagine, but there she was, and there she shone. But the herring's head and the piece of tinder swore that the glow-worm could only shine at certain times and could not therefore be considered for the job as a street lamp. The old lamp explained that none of them shone strongly enough for a street lamp, but this none of the three would believe. And when they heard that it was not the lamp herself who could choose her successor, they said that they were glad of that, for she was far too old to be able to make such an important decision. At that moment, the wind came rushing round the corner of the street and blew through the top of the old lamp and said, "What is this I hear? That you want to leave us tomorrow? Are we seeing each other for the last time tonight? In that case, I must give you something to remember me by. I will blow right through your head, so that you shall not only remember plainly and clearly all you will hear and see, but when in your presence anything is read or said, you will be able to actually see it." "Oh, that is a valuable gift indeed," said the old street lamp. "I thank you most sincerely. I only hope I shall not be melted down." "That won't happen yet," said the wind, "and now I shall blow into you your memory. If you get a few more gifts like this, you will truly have an enjoyable old age." "If only I'm not melted down," sighed the old lamp again. "Or could you secure my memory even in that case?" "Now, old street lamp, please be reasonable," said the wind, and then it blew. Just then the moon came out. "What will you give?" asked the wind. "I shan't give anything at all," the moon exclaimed. "I'm on the wane, and besides, lanterns have never shone for me, but I shine for the lanterns." And the moon retired again behind the clouds so that she would not be bothered. Just then, a drop of water fell right onto the cover of the lamp as if from a roof scutter, but it declared that it came from the grey clouds and that it too was a gift, perhaps the most valuable one of them all. "I will penetrate you and will give you the ability to turn rusty in a single night if you so wish, and so fall to pieces and return to dust." But the lamp thought this a horrid gift, and the wind thought so too. "Have you nothing better? Have you nothing better to give?" It swished as loud as it could. Just then a glittering shooting star flew past, a long, bright trail. "What was that?" cried the herring's head. "Did a star fall down here? I truly believe it flew right into the lamp." "Well, to be sure, if such highly placed individuals are seeking that office, we may as well pack up and go home." And he did just that. And the other two candidates did the same. But the old lamp suddenly flared up most brightly. "What a wonderful gift," said she. "Those bright stars which had always given me such pleasure and which shine so beautifully, as I have never been able to shine though I have tried heart and soul. Those brilliant stars have noticed me, a miserable old lantern, and have sent a messenger down to me with a rare gift, that everything that I myself remember and see vividly and clearly can be seen also by those whom I love. Now indeed this is a precious gift, for if you cannot share your joy with others, it is only half a joy." "What honourable thoughts," said the wind, "but it appears you are not aware that a wax candle is necessary. Unless a candle is lit inside you, nobody else will be able to share your pleasure to see anything. The stars did not think of that. They imagined that everything that shines must have at least a candle inside. But now I am truly tired," announced the wind. "I am going to rest." And he died. The next day, well, it would be better to pass over to the next day. The next evening, the old lamp lay in an armchair. And where? In the old lamplighter's room. He had begged the wise men of the town in consideration of his long and faithful service to be allowed to keep the old street lamp. They laughed at him when he asked for it and gave it to him. And so now the lamp lay in the armchair by the warm stove. It seemed as if this had made her grow bigger till she almost filled the armchair. The old people were sitting at supper, gazing fondly at the old lamp, as though they would have liked it best to have her sit at the table. Actually, they lived in a cellar, slightly underground. It was necessary to pass through a paved hall before coming into their room, but it was pleasantly warm, for the door was bound with strips. The whole room looked comfortable and clean. There were curtains round the bed, and in the little windows, and on the window ledges there were two very strange flower pots. They had been brought home by their neighbour Christian, a sailor from the East or the West Indies. There were two earthenware elephants without backs and hollow inside, and out of the soil with which they were filled grew in one of them the most beautiful leeks. That was the old folks' kitchen garden, and in the other was a large flowering geranium. That was their flower garden. On the wall hung a big coloured picture of the Viennese Congress. All the kings and emperors were there nicely together. A Bornholm clock with heavy leaden weights they went tic-tac. It always went too fast, but the old folk would say that this was better than going too slow. And now they were eating their supper, and the old lantern lay, as we have already mentioned, in the armchair right by the stove. And she felt as if now the whole world was upside down. But when the old lamplighter looked at her and talked about all the two had gone through together in rain and sleet, in bright, brief summer nights, and in wintry snowstorms, when it was good to get back to his cellar home, then the old lamp felt happy again. For she saw all he spoke of, as if it were happening right then, and she knew the wind had indeed not deceived her. The old couple was so hard-working and agile, they did not let a single hour pass by in idleness. On Sunday afternoons, some book or other always appeared on the table, usually a travel book, and the old man would read aloud about Africa, about the great forests and the wild elephants which roamed there freely. The old woman would listen and eye the earthenware elephants that served her as flower pots. "Yes, I can almost see it all," she would say, and the lamp would wish so fervently that someone would light a candle and put it inside her, for then the old woman would see the whole scene as clearly as she did. The tall trees, their thickly leaved intertwined branches, the men on horseback, the whole herds of elephants crushing reeds and bushes with their broad feet. "What use are all my abilities when there is no candle here?" sighed the lamp. "They only have oil and tallow candles, and neither of those will do." But one day a whole pile of wax candle ends were brought into the cellar room. They used the larger pieces for burning, and the smaller ones the old woman used to wax her thread with when she was sewing. They were real wax candles indeed, yet no one thought of placing the tiniest little bit into the lamp. "So here I stand with my rare abilities," grumbled the lamp. "There is so much within me, yet I cannot share with anyone my joy. They do not know that I could turn their bare white walls into the richest tapestry, to fresh green woods, to anything they might desire. They do not know." One day, on the old lamplighter's birthday, the old woman came up to the lamp and said with a smile, "I will make him some illumination." And the lamp's iron hat creaked, for she thought, "Now, at last I will get my candle." But they gave her oil, not wax. She burned all the evening, but now she knew that the gift the stars had given her, the most wonderful gift of all, would in this life remain an undiscovered gift. And so she dreamt, for surely someone so very gifted must be able to dream. She dreamt that the old couple were dead, and that she herself was taken to the iron foundry to be melted down and made into something else. She felt just as frightened as when she was to go to the town hall to face the council of 36 wise men. But though she knew she had the power of turning rusty and changing to dust, she chose not to do so. And so she ended up in the furnace and became a most exquisite iron candlestick made for holding wax tapers. It was in the form of an angel carrying a bouquet of flowers, and in the center of the bouquet the wax candle was placed. The candlestick was put upon a green writing table, and the room in which it stood was such a pleasant room. There were many books all over the place, and lovely pictures hung on the walls. It was a poet's room, and everything he thought about and wrote about was pictured all around. Deep, dark forests, meadows flooded in sun, with a stork striding about proudly or a stately ship riding high on the seas. Oh, what rare abilities I have, thought the old lamp as she awoke from her dream. I could almost long to be melted down. But no, that must not happen whilst the old folk are alive. They love me for my own sake. To them, I'm like their own child. They have scrubbed me so nicely, and they have given me oil. I am as well off here as the Viennese Congress over there, and that is an honor indeed. And from that time she was inwardly more at peace, and surely this, the honest, respectable old street lamp, truly deserved. So that was the story of the old street lamp. How did you like it? I found it so heartwarming and touching. It was a tale about ambition. It was a tale about believing in our abilities, but at the end of the day, feeling content in having enough. As they say that the person who needs less, the least, has the most. So the old street lamp was very talented indeed, and she had so many gifts, but she knew that in the end, love was just enough. Unconditional love was all she truly needed, even if her gifts lay undiscovered. So I thought that was a beautiful tale. Let me know what you thought about it too, and I'll see you the next time I find a story that's worth sharing. Hope you liked listening in, and goodbye.